To me, this would be an insane change to make overall right now in the Halifax real estate world. I think it would be a change that would really shock the system. I think it would be a change that would really hurt buyers, especially young buyers, first-time home buyers, young professionals, young families. I think it's a crazy idea, and I really don't agree with it. Halifax is in the middle of a housing crisis. Prices are high, supply is low, and at a time when buyers are struggling to get into the housing market to begin with, the city is discussing whether or not they should increase the deed transfer tax on home purchases. On one hand, this could make buying a home that much more difficult. On the other hand, we obviously need some money for some of the infrastructure issues that we have and have tons of capital expenses coming up. In this video, I'm going to take you through an article that was released on CBC a few days ago, and I'm going to discuss kind of what my thoughts are about this and talk about this overall situation with the deed transfer tax. But just before I get into it, if you're new here, my name is Andrew Stevens. I've been a realtor in Halifax for over 10 years, and I've sold over 500 homes across the HRM. And if you want to be educated on the Halifax real estate market, then hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. And if you're thinking about making a move in the HRM and you'd like to get in touch with me, you can reach out to me anytime to book a call or a meeting with me at the Calendly link below in the description. All right, so this is the article that I was referring to. I'm going to take you through a little bit of this just quickly, and then I'm going to talk about it overall, kind of talk about deed transfer tax and what this all means. So Halifax explores raising deed transfer tax to help pay for major projects. Halifax is exploring the idea of raising deed transfer tax to help with looming financial pressures, but any changes could only come from the approval of the province. In recent months, councillors for the HRM have been discussing how to pay for infrastructure needed to support the rapidly growing capital city without placing major burden on residents. The municipality has more than $2 billion of capital projects on the books over the next 4 years, including a new police station and redevelopment of the Halifax Forum. Last Tuesday, a councillor passed the motion to examine raising the deed transfer tax and how that could help pay for some of those big ticket items. I said, no one likes to pay more, but no one likes to have your infrastructure falling apart, sitting in traffic and not having a transit system that can deliver and not having recreational facilities. At a certain point, you got to be honest and ask yourself, how are we going to pay for some of this stuff? So let's dive into this here. The deed transfer tax, what it is. It is applied to your closing costs when you purchase a home in the HRM. So this does vary a little bit depending on what municipality you're in. So this is in HRM 1.5% of the purchase price. So in other words, if you buy a home at $600,000, you are paying $9,000 in deed transfer tax. So for context, even if this just increased to 2% instead of 1.5%, that would increase your expenses on buying an average home at $600,000 here in HRM by $3,000. So from $9,000 up to $12,000. And that's only with a 0.5% increase on the deed transfer tax. So this has been 1.5% since I've been in the industry for a long time, as much as I know, but at least since I've been in almost 11 and a half years ago now. And it's unavoidable. It is what it is. If you're buying a home, this is the deed transfer tax that you're paying. Now, there's a few different ways they could do this. They could just overall blanket statement raise the amount of deed transfer tax, right? So it could be like, I'm going from 1.5 to 2% on all of these property sales. But they also look at, in this article, talk about a tiered system. So Austin also asked staff to explore a tiered system used in places like BC, Manitoba, and Toronto, where cheaper properties would have a lower tax rate than higher end homes. So for example, in BC, they charge 2% of the fair market value for properties between $200 and $2 million and 5% for those over $3 million. If you're buying, a $2 million property, I think you can afford a higher tax rate than if you're paying $400,000 for a pretty modest side of a duplex, said Austin. So they're saying they could bring in more money, fix some of the growth challenge they've been seeing. They could, get some capital challenges completed, or some capital fixes completed, sorry. And the question is, I guess for me, like, what's what's the risk, what's the reward here, right? So the case for it is obviously they're going to have more money coming in, but I would argue that they've already had a lot more money coming in recent years, because when you think about the deed transfer tax, this is applied to the purchase price, right? So think about this. Price points have gone up from approximately $360,000 in 2020 to now just over $600,000 in 2025 as of right now, year to date. So for example, in 2020, we had around 7,400 sales in the HRM, and this led to approximately $40.5 million of deed transfer tax collected. This is purely based on the MLS sales, not all the private ones stacked on top of that. So it's probably quite a bit more than that in general. There's probably quite a bit of homes that are flipping hands privately as well. And if I compare that, so 7,400 sales in 2020 to make about $40.5 million. Last year in 2024, there was only 5,200 sales, so 30% less sales, but they would have made just under $45 million. So they're making more money, even though there's way less sales happening on the MLS. So to me, I would argue that although they're saying they need to make more money and they want to be doing this, they're already making way more money on the deed transfer tax. That's just kind of the reality of what we're talking about here. The article goes on to talk about whether or not this would hurt property sales or development, whether or not it would hurt buyers. And it's hard to say exactly, kind of hypothetically, what that would do and what that would entail. But the reality is we don't really want the cost of development to continue to go up, because that means the cost of building all those homes and building all those apartments is going to go up as well. And for the record, who do you think that is going to fall on? It's going to fall on the tenants when the rents are sky high. Just like right now, the tenants are paying sky high rents for all these new buildings going up. And that's purely because it's so expensive to build those buildings in the first place. So, developers are not just going to eat this cost if this continues to go up. So in terms of the overall argument, there's an argument to be made that, fairness wise, they could, charge more for the more expensive properties. Is that really fair? Those people are already paying more taxes as it is in terms of income taxes and so on. It could cool speculation. So it could cool developers trying to flip places and trying to do developments. And I would argue that we want to, help development thrive, not slow it down by adding more costs. By the way, Halifax water costs are going up as well. All utility costs are going up. Land costs are up. Property taxes are up. So all these costs are up. And here we are having the city talking about putting more fuel on this fire, talking about putting those costs up even more. And where do they think that's going to, trickle down to? And it's going to trickle down to, quite frankly, the consumer. That's just kind of the reality of where it's at. Now, my case against this would be the fact that this is going to make buying a home for, first-time home buyers, or any buyer for that matter, especially young families and first-time home buyers who are already very much struggling to get into the housing market. This is only going to make that more difficult. It's going to make it more expensive for them to purchase a home to begin with. It's also likely to make it more difficult for them to save money, because in theory, this is going to trickle right down to the consumer. So the rents are going to be higher and so on in some of these newer buildings. So it's going to be harder to save money because you're paying more money up front for your rent, for example. On top of that, it doesn't really address the root of the problem. All right. The problem that we have in the Halifax real estate market is the lack of supply. Now, the good news is we're building a lot of housing units right now. There's something like 12,000 housing units in the HRM under construction right now, which is fantastic. We need a ton of supply to hit the market. But the root of the problem is supply. And by making it more expensive to purchase properties, that's also meaning it's going to be more expensive for developers to purchase properties and contractors to purchase properties. So if it makes it more expensive to purchase the property, it's going to make it more expensive to the consumer at the ground level eventually. Maybe it doesn't happen overnight, but that will trickle down to the consumer eventually. To me, this would be an insane change to make overall right now in the Halifax real estate world. I think it would be a change that would really shock the system. I think it would be a change that would really hurt buyers, especially young buyers, first-time home buyers, young professionals, young families. I think it's a crazy idea, and I really don't agree with it. I'm actually surprised I haven't seen more about this, like kind of in the news and more people talking about it on social media, because a lot of times when they say that property taxes are going to go up, for example, that might only affect a homeowner by, a couple $100s a year or a few $100s a year. But this would be like a few $1,000s potentially on a standard home purchase, or even more depending on what they do. And by the way, those tiered systems that I've been talking about from this article in terms of like Toronto or Vancouver, think about those two cities. What do they both have in common? Their prices are sky high. So it's not like this deed transfer tax is making that big of a difference. Look at the infrastructure problems that those cities have. And I know we're comparing apples and oranges, but my point is, so if they're raising the deed transfer tax, that might have a little bit of a impact on the overall budget and how much money they're taking in. So maybe they take in an extra $10 million or even $15 or $20 million, but it's not enough to move the needle in a huge way for the city, but it's something that could make a huge impact on the ground level in terms of the consumer and what me and you and all your friends and family are paying for houses and paying for closing costs in a market that has already seen incredible price growth over the last 5 years. And the expenses have gone up with that in terms of utilities and property taxes and everything else. So to me, this is an insane thought to have. I really don't agree with it. And I very highly doubt this is going to go anywhere, but I'll be watching this one very, very closely to see what is coming up. Now, if you're still here watching, I'm curious to hear what you think. Do you think this is something that the city should be looking at? Or do you think this is an idea that should be going nowhere fast? Comment below. I'd be curious to see what you guys are thinking about this one. And if you get any value out of this video, all I ask is that you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. And if you're thinking about making a move in the HRM and you'd like to get in touch with me, you can reach out to me anytime in the Calendly link below. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support, and have a great day.